Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. So here's my big problem with meal planning. Anytime I actually sit down to plan a meal, it's like my brain flushes like a toilet and I forget every edible food that ever existed. And while I don't think I necessarily lack creativity, sometimes I just need something to build off of, you know what I mean? So this week I decided to randomly generate 3 different ingredients, and then from those ingredients I built meals off of those. I started by creating 3 different categories: protein, carbs, and vegetables. From there, I wrote each individual item on a small slip of paper, every item I could think of that would fit into that category, of course with the help of Google, and then I dropped those slips of paper into their respective jars. From there, I started drawing my prompts, and because I didn't want to have to buy 5 different kinds of meat, I decided to only draw 3 different kinds of meat that I would buy that week, and then I just dispersed those throughout the 5 days. So for example, this week I drew steak, ground turkey, and ground chicken. So because the steak was a more expensive one, I put that on Wednesday, and then I had 2 days as ground turkey and 2 days as ground chicken. After I had my protein set, I then went down the line and started drawing what starch I was going to have for each meal. So think pastas, potatoes, breads, squashes, any kind of starchy kind of foods. I then did the same for all my vegetables. I just went down each day drawing a vegetable for each day. And in the end, this is what I ended up with. And I'm now going to show you guys how I turn those ingredients into beautiful home-cooked meals. This one was a fairly traditional recipe, nothing crazy here, and everything turned out really well in my opinion. The ingredients I drew for today were ground turkey, white rice, and broccoli. And to that I added garlic, honey barbecue sauce, shredded cheddar cheese, chicken bouillon paste, tomato sauce, sweet onion, and cream. I started by finely chopping 1/4 of a sweet onion, as well as 2 or 3 cloves of garlic. I then prepared my meatballs. So I put a slice of bread into a bowl and added 3 tablespoons of water, or you can use broth for more flavor. I added 1 pound of turkey, half of the onion that I chopped, and half of the garlic that I chopped, and then I mixed all of that together really well. I then set that aside and I started to chop up my broccoli. After all of that was chopped, I put it in a medium saucepan with 1 cup of white rice, 2 cups of water, about 1 tablespoon of the bouillon. I then brought all that to a boil and then covered and cooked for about 10 to 12 minutes. While that was going, I then heated up some olive oil in a pan and I started to form my meatballs, and I cooked those until they were brown, and then I removed them from the pan. Once the rice and broccoli were done, I added about 1/3 of a pint of cream and a very generous heaping cup of cheddar cheese. I then mixed all that up until it was melty. In a small bowl, I then mixed the small can of tomato sauce, and then just to help measure it out, I filled the can again with barbecue sauce. I then mixed those 2 together really well. To the pan that I used for the meatballs, I added 1 tablespoon of butter. I then mixed in the rest of the onions and cooked those until they were tender. I then added the garlic until it was fragrant. Then I added the sauce mixture and cooked that until it started to warm up. Then I added my meatballs and cooked all of that until the sauce started to thicken. And then Monday's recipe was done. First day of creative meal planning. What do you think of the first meal?
Very good.
What would you rate it out of 10?
I think it's all 9.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh, we're off to a good start. My personal rating for this one was probably 9 out of 10 as well. Like I said, everything was fairly traditional. There was nothing too crazy or too wild with it. And I would actually highly recommend the cheesy broccoli rice. That was really good. This recipe was a bit more of a gamble because I've never used ground chicken in a stir fry before, but I love trying new things, so this is how I made this recipe. The initial ingredients that I drew for this one were ground chicken, jasmine rice, and cabbage. And so of course instantly my mind went to stir fry. That just seemed to make sense to me. So I added sliced sweet onion, diced garlic, shaved carrots, beef bouillon paste, and P.F. Chang's Mongolian sauce. I started with 1 cup of the jasmine rice, 2 cups of water, which I salted very well. I then brought that to a boil and covered and cooked it for about 20 minutes. Next, I heated some oil in a pan, and because I had it on hand, I used sesame oil. Once the oil was warmed up, I then threw in the cabbage and fried it until it was tender. Once that was tender, I added in the shaped carrots and the sliced onion, and I cooked those until they were tender, which usually doesn't take too long, given the way they were cut. After that, I removed those from the pan. I then added a little bit more sesame oil. I added the ground chicken and the garlic and a spoonful of beef bouillon. And I cooked that until the chicken was heated thoroughly through. I then re-added the veggies to the pan, and I started adding the Mongolian sauce to taste. And at that point, I just warmed everything up until it was kind of bubbly, and I served it over the rice. Day 2. What do you think?
It's okay.
Yeah. What would you rate this one?
Probably about a 5. Not bad, but just not really my cup of tea.
Okay. I'll make you a cup of tea tomorrow. Now, my rating was a little bit higher than Jordan's. I put it at a 6 out of 10. I used a pre-made sauce purely out of convenience, but I don't think it was a great choice in sauce. In the future, if I make this again, I will definitely pick a different sauce, but otherwise, I thought this was a really good recipe. I mean, you really can't go wrong with steak, right? So this was definitely the easiest recipe of the week. So the starting ingredients were, of course, steak. I also drew sweet potato and green bell pepper. So the only thing I added was sliced sweet onion. I started by preheating my oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. I then stabbed some holes in the sweet potatoes, wrapped those in aluminum foil, and once the oven was preheated, I put them in on the middle rack. I then seasoned the steaks with salt, pepper, and a special steak seasoning that I had on hand. I then cut the pepper and sliced the onions and sauteed them both in a pan with some butter. And that was it for the things that I needed to do. Jordan really wanted to grill the steak, and I was all for that because that was less work for me. So he worked his magic, and that was it. Then we had dinner. What would you rate today?
Well, I had a hand mixer.
Oh, whatever.
Good solid 9.
Okay. My rating for this one was 7 out of 10. I think personally I would have rated it higher if we had bought maybe a better quality steak. I try to eat vegetarian when I can, so if I'm going to eat meat, I want it to at least be good quality, you know? But otherwise, again, you really can't go wrong with steak, so I think this turned out really, really well. This was a recipe I was most terrified of because I drew some really crazy ingredients. So the ingredients I drew were ground turkey, brown rice, and okra. And I did a little bit of research, and from my research, I figured that risotto would probably be the best thing to make from these ingredients. So to them, I added beef bouillon paste, mozzarella cheese, cream, Roma tomatoes, and sweet onion. So when I bought my okra, it came in this pre-wrapped package. So I only used half the package, and I picked the smaller, narrower ones and cut those into chunks. I then diced and cut the tomato into chunks. Next, I warmed some olive oil in a pan to a fairly high temperature, and I fried the okra. And I had read that this was a great way to help with the slime because okra can get kind of slimy. So I basically just fried them until it was brown on both sides, and then I set that aside. Next, I added a tablespoon of butter to the pan and sauteed the onion and tomato until they were soft. Then I added the turkey and cooked that until it was browned. And at this point, I kind of mistook how many ingredients I had, so I had to switch to a bigger pot. But I then added the rice, the okra, 2 cups of water, and a generous spoonful of the beef bouillon. And I covered and cooked all of that for about 20 minutes. I then uncovered the pan, added the cream and the mozzarella. I then added more salt and pepper, and I cooked all of that until it thickened. So what do you think of the risotto?
Pretty good.
Yeah? All right, rating out of 10.
Out of 10, probably around 6 or 7.
All right. Now, I actually really enjoyed this one, so I gave it an 8 out of 10. And I know this probably wasn't what you would consider like a traditional risotto. I mean, it was rice and cream, right? So close enough. And this was my first time trying out okra, and it ended up turning out really good. Like, it actually tasted really well in this recipe. And the last recipe of the week was also the most experimental, and afterwards I decided to remove plantain from the carbs jar, but this is what I did. So the starting ingredients that I drew were ground chicken, plantains, and bok choy. And why my mind immediately went to shepherd's pie, I honestly could not tell you. But that's what I attempted to make. So I added frozen corn, beef bouillon paste, Worcester sauce, carrot, garlic, sweet onion, and 1 Laughing Cow wedge of cheese. I started by peeling and cutting 2 plantains. I then melted 2 tablespoons of butter in a pan, added the plantain, salt, pepper, garlic powder, and I cooked that until the plantain started to brown and it got really soft. I put the plantain in a food processor. I then added in the Laughing Cow cheese and pureed it until it was smooth, and then I set it aside. I then set the broiler to high and cut the remaining veggies and added them to the pan to cook. I then removed those. I then added the chicken and cooked that until it was cooked all the way through. I then added about 2 tablespoons of flour and stirred that until everything was coated. I then added the veggies back in. I added a spoonful of beef bouillon paste, a generous amount of Worcester sauce, a little bit of mustard, a little bit of ketchup, and I then mixed all of that together until it thickened. I then added that mixture to a baking dish, topped it with the mashed plantain, and put it in the broiler until the top got brown and crispy. So what do you think? Last day.
It's a little bit different.
So what would you rate it out of 10?
That's a tough one.
You can be honest.
Maybe like a 4.
Oh, that bad?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm still trying to get familiar with the flavors, I guess.
Okay. Love you. Personally, I really like this recipe. I gave it a 7 out of 10, but like I said, the plantain was kind of a gamble, and because this was the last recipe of the week, that caused the plantains to over-ripen, so they got really sweet, and I actually really enjoy sweet stuff. Like a good mix of sweet and savory is totally my jam. So if you guys happen to try this one, let me know how you liked it, because I would really like to know. And that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed. Hopefully it gave you some ideas on how you can plan your meals in the future. I thought this was a lot of fun. It got me thinking outside the box and pairing different foods together that I wouldn't normally pair together. And some of them worked really well, some of them not as much. And of course, if you do this, you can customize whatever items you put in your little buckets however you want. If you don't like certain meats, or if you're vegetarian, you know, put those kind of options in your little jar. If you enjoyed this video, I really hope that you'll leave me a thumbs up. I love seeing those. That make me feel like I'm actually doing a good job. If you're not already, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I would love to see this channel grow. And that being said, guys, I will see you the next time around. Bye!